Edward in Tennessee writes, do you remember Sheffield Labs? Absolutely. Back in the 80s when I had both CDs and LPs, their direct-to-disc LPs stood out in that format. To my understanding, they were of limited production, and I remember that they were directly cut the disc and the master mother from the live performance mic input. Their dynamic range and fidelity were noticeably improved over mass-produced LPs. However, overall quality was limited to the cutting engineer's skill. On at least one of the records, I had part of the groove got so wide it started to touch the other one next to it. Still, it was a worthwhile experience in my opinion. Their value was not so much the purity and the simplicity of the LP production process, but because it cut out all the nightmarish equalization and compression and tape characteristics which plagued normal production. Do I agree, disagree? Boy, this guy doesn't have a clue. I don't know. No, I agree. No, you clearly have a clue. And I agree. Sheffield was an amazing label. It was at a time where there were a number of direct-to-disc labels, but Sheffield was the king. And I think at one point I owned every Lincoln Mayorga discs out there. What was it Holly Cole? See, the old memory. I don't remember all of them, but boy, they were terrific. They were dynamic. The kick drum, I never forget the kick drum of a Sheffield record. Boom, just bam, bam, just hit you in the chest. And those were made at a time when people were realizing the limitations of tape, of recording tape, analog tape. So tape is not all that dynamic. It can be, but it really, when you record onto tape, and you go through one of these mixing boards, onto tape, then back again through the mixing board, mix it all up, again onto tape. So you start with maybe your multi-track tape, you run it through the mix board, then you go down to your 2-track master, then you put it over and you cut a disc off of it. You've just lost a whole bunch of quality. Now that's something we don't experience in using DSD and digital properly in recording, because we have more dynamic range and we know what to do with that. But back in the day, that's how it was done, and yes, there was a loss. Now the tricky part is, in any kind of vinyl recording or mastering process, as he was talking about, the groove width has to change with amplitude. As it gets louder, you're going to have more groove, more space for the grooves to go, right? So the way they did that, is my understanding, is they had the cutting engineer was sitting there with the wheel that would turn the cutting head, and he had a score of music, and he would go along with the score, and all right, there's a big one coming up here, and he would raise it up. They'd have their big crescendo, the big thing, and then he would take it back down, and he'd have to get that right. Now, one of the problems that they had, of course, when he said limited production, heck yes, because from that master that you cut directly from the musicians and the microphones into the cutting head of the vinyl machine that made the masters, you could only print, you only stamp out so many records, and then you had to throw it away. So they had to do this over 2 or 3 times in order to have a big enough run. I have visions of doing this again. My buddy J.I. Agnew in Greece, the madman genius that built the phenomenal reverbs that we use, these hand-built vacuum tube reverbs that we use exclusively at Octave Records. They're the only ones in the world that I know of. J.I. might have a stash. But he is building a cutting lathe for me over at Octave Records. I've been waiting 2 or 3 years, J.I. I should bang on him again. But once we get that, we might experiment with some direct-to-discs. I think that'd be a hoot. And I would really like to do that. And maybe you'll see that someday from Octave Records. But anyway, that's what it's all about. Yes, I remember it. Yes, you have a clue. And thanks for the memories. Okay.